I was waiting for a couple folks, but I think we ought to probably get moving. So I'm running solo tonight, which is an interesting moment for us because typically we're doing something a little more hands-on, a little more involved as well, and so the combination of the two is going to be a little different for everybody. Like I say, normally Mara or Crystal, who's been standing in really admirably for while Mara is still is on maternity leave. I believe she's back on Monday. So that'll be good for all of us. I hope it'll be good for her. She'll miss her two E's. So I said that things were going to be sort of different. This is kind of a different gig. You'll see that you have sort of some rando ingredients in your kit, and there are no recipes, and there is a really good reason for that. Had several requests, and hopefully those same folks that put in those requests are here tonight. I'm not sure, but there was a request, some time ago when we set this class up, to do something that had to do with New Year. Everybody really celebrates, especially that period of time between Christmas and New Year's, and then everybody swears that they're going to have their resolutions, and I'm going to walk more, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to work out, yada yada yada. So far I haven't done any of that myself, so there's that. But if you're working on it, good for you. But this particular class is representative of that. So everybody has a little bit of a different interpretation about what healthy eating is. I'm going to give my version. I'm not a dietitian, not a nutritionist. I teach a nutrition class, but I try to keep things pretty practical. So in signing up for this one, we ostensibly are talking about healthier eating. There's been a lot of different phrases that kind of go along with that that we'll touch on tonight. Speaking of which, again, I started to say, I'm running solo. I don't have a moderator. So if anybody has a question, periodically I'm going to walk over. I'm going to check the chats, but it doesn't show up here. Try pulling this up. It doesn't, kind of disappears on me. So every once in a while I have to click on the screen to make sure that that something's coming in. If you want to put something into the chat, then like I say, periodically I'll check that. Otherwise, please just unmute and ask your question, or you have a comment or what have you. It's sort of like a guided journey tonight. So now we're not completely away from everything that we know and hold dear for you folks that have been with me for a whole bunch of these. So there are some things that I'm going to recommend, but I didn't want us to get sidetracked with recipes, or somebody comes in late, hey, which one are we doing, and that type of thing. The ingredients that I got for you are all pretty interconnected, and so we'll talk about that as we go along. So I thought we've got some notes here to go along with things as we talk about this stuff. I have a lot of thoughts about what is healthy and what's not. Is it clean? Is it low glycemic? Is it vegan? Is it low carb? Is it keto? Yada yada yada. There are a lot of different ways and a lot of different approaches, and I would say there's about a dozen of us here or plus, and I would say that like a dozen of us might have a different view on how things might go. So one of the things that's important to me when I think about this stuff, I mean, y'all know what I do. I don't want to sacrifice any flavor just to eat in a cleaner, more healthy manner. So, and I sure as like I got a wife and a couple kids at home and whatever. I don't want to sacrifice a ton of time either. So I thought we'd start out with something that is like, I've never done this before. But this, my friends, goes in a microwave, something that we have not in our history of doing these classes ever talked about before. But I will also tell you that it's delicious. I don't know if anybody has had this particular variety. We get them at Sam's. They're a little less expensive than picking them up at the regular grocery stores. I realized that they come in 6-pack boxes. And well, I'm like, oh great, I need 12. Actually, I need 13. So I don't have the other one, the purple one that is brown rice, and it's brown and red rice with some kale and what have you. What I can tell you is a couple different things. You're coming home, and sometimes the absolute last thing you want to do is, try to figure out a starch. Which starch do I want? Is it healthy? Healthy? Is it, how long is it going to take? Yeah, a whole bunch of things. I hope it tastes good. These things, very tasty. I don't, Seeds of Change doesn't pay me for any endorsement here. I just happen to like them. And I love that it is, you squeeze the bag around a little bit, kind of moving it around, and you pop it in the microwave for 90 seconds and your starch for the night is done. But that's just that's great, and I love it. But that is the start. This is made predominantly with quinoa. Quinoa is a complete protein, which is number one, and something that we'll come back to in just a bit. It has a relatively low fat count, and it's certainly very low in saturated fat. Has a ton of garlic, so if you're a garlic person, which I am, I hope you are, you don't sacrifice any flavor for speed or to have that protein source. Because it's a complete protein, you could use this as your entree, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You can turn this, and I'm going to talk to you about turning this into 2 or 3 different things. You can certainly make your own quinoa. More power to you. It takes a little bit longer than rice, but it's fine, and you can use that. Any leftover liquid as a nice starch to thicken things and what have you. We'll talk about broths in just a bit, and that would be one of those. You can do a lot of different things. I just happen to enjoy these a lot. The other one is also pretty tasty. So just because you need to eat healthy or cleaner or what have you, it doesn't mean. This is actually Crystal, who is a committed vegan, which just is terrifying to me. Said that these are vegan. Vegan. What she just said, vegan. And if you look through the ingredients, yeah, there's nothing in there but soy. There's no dairy, etc. It's pretty darn good for you, and it's also, for those of you, we're coming into the middle of winter, and it's going to be cold, and you want to come inside, and one of the things that you want is to, fill yourself, right? Quinoa does that. And this particular product is warm. You'd be surprised. A lot of times I'm feeding the three of us, and we use this as our starch. And this one little packet, because the quinoa is so dense, along with the brown rice, that it's very filling. And not a small guy, and I kind of want to get filled, especially since once again it's cold outside. And it does that job very nicely. So there's just not a lot of downside, and you get those same benefits if you're cooking quinoa scratch, just like you would make a rice pilaf. You make quinoa pilaf. Anything that you do with rice, you could do with quinoa. Your other packet, as long as we're talking about that same kind of follow through, the brown rice has a tremendous amount of fiber. Well, we all know what fiber does, and good for them. There's that benefit. So if you're going to have, people have said for a long time, if you're going to have rice, have brown rice, it's just a lot better for you. And if I read correctly, the red rice is also not, it's pretty protein dense, and has some nutrients that flow into there, plus makes it look prettier. The few occasions where I've made red rice, because it's kind of, or it has been in the past, kind of difficult to put your hands on and a little expensive. It has been, it's been very tasty. It has good chew, and is, once again, has some real positive nutrients. Give me just a second. I got a question in the chat here. Do the seeds have changed? These packets need to be refrigerated. Yours came cold. No, came cold because I stuck it in the bag so I keep it with all of the produce, and I wouldn't miss out on doing it. Absolutely not. Temperature stable is sold on the shelf along with other starches. There are other. I'm not saying this is the only thing that you should get this particular manufacturer. I can tell you that they do a good job. But if you went, and I got those at Sam's, but I noticed that Hy-Vee has more and more of these, and of course you can get like a quick white rice. Uncle Ben's has one of those things, and they're super great for getting things done. And I'm not going to say that I wouldn't do that. I'm just saying, for the purposes of this particular class, and also just what's happening at Casa de Gasaway, when we're not on a Zoom thing, that we tend to gravitate towards these because we really like flavor. So, but to answer the question, all of those are temperature stable. So no, absolutely not. And what a great thing to have stashed. You got extra guests. You need to accentuate or stretch your whatever that might be. That leads us to another thing. I'm gonna jump ahead just a little bit, but I said that all of these things are connective in some way. Some of the things that I'm going to recommend. Yeah, what was that? No, okay. One of those things that I was going to recommend is as we're in this kind of going into this cold weather, a lot of us make things that are warm, comfortable, stick to your ribs, chilies, stews, casseroles, certainly soups, and that's something that is very, you come in from the cold, and wouldn't it be great if you had that nice bowl of soup, steamy, to kind of warm you through as you go through. One of those things I was going to recommend, and once again, putting the cart before the horse, but one of those things I was going to recommend is look up, try to find yourself a recipe that you like for a broth-based mushroom soup, and then You can, I'm not endorsing vegetarians or meatless Mondays or whatever, but if that's something that you are trying to do, that's one of the things that you're thinking about. Once again, complete protein. You heat up your soup and you throw in kind of at the last second, you throw in one of these packets, or you've made some quinoa, you got it stashed in the fridge. It holds very nicely. It holds a little longer than things. It's usually like 10 days if you make a batch and you keep it refrigerated. Drop that into your soup or your stew. It's not only going to to stretch out your soup dollar, but it's also going to thicken the soup just naturally as the starches are released, and it helps flavor out as well. So a lot of positives there. Broth based stuff. A little broth here. I do try to make my own at home, because one of those other cheaty things that I talk about is grabbing a rotisserie chicken every once in a while. It's just because you get so many meals out of that thing. You get a, especially if it's, just 2 or 3 of you in the home. If you grab a rotisserie chicken, yes, they may have used some olive oil to baste the chicken or what have you, but for the most part, pretty lean. Lots of juices that you can use in a soup or a broth, or just making your own stock. And then also, oh man, pulling the chicken nachos, going over the top of chicken salads. So many different things that you can do there, and you folks know that. Most all of you, I've kind of gotten to know. I know you're foodies, but the thing that I want to emphasize there is, if you want to purchase some broth, more power to you. You're going to make your own, whatever. I'm encouraging this. I don't know if any of you. I'm not much of a trendy guy. I kind of like the things that work, but I have noticed that, I've seen several articles now where people are, they're having broth, or, they use the term bone broth for breakfast. There's kind of a reasoning for that. I mean, you can, once again, heat up some broth. It's cold. You throw that down, maybe instead of that second cup of coffee. And it's very filling. You're getting a little bit of a protein shot as well. You're getting liquid into your body in a way that you hadn't before. It doesn't have to be attached to, salty Lipton cup of soup, which I'm sure they still make in a packet. I vaguely remember that. Not to say that salt isn't a bad thing, even though I might a little bit later be saying that salt is a bad thing. But I am saying that this is not just to make yourself some chicken noodle. Love making chicken noodle, but you could just slug some of this down and get yourself prepared for the day. Good breakfast. You could add you could add any of these items that you're looking at right now. If you really wanted, even the blueberries, but any of the things that are in front of there, and that will provide some different opportunities from you, whether it's a protein shot with the rices, or the pseudo protein and the chew and the umami flavor of the mushrooms, the avocado adding some positive fats to you, the spinach giving you a little bit of giving you an iron shot in the morning without having to pop one of those iron pills. The sweet potato for some texture, and some some positive carbs there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can go on. I didn't pack the broth because I didn't want to rip it out of the bags. Are a little thin. But if you're doing something like that, that is your friend. And a lot of in the past, Like my mom used to use bouillon cubes, right? Weiler's bouillon cubes, which were awesome if a kid could sneak one and pop it into his mouth, you know, and damn near kill you, but it was delicious. But that's what we considered chicken stock in the making, you know, when I was a kid. There's not the same. You can get a pretty moderate chicken broth that has some flavor without being overly salty. These days, you can get a low sodium as well, even like Swanson's, you know, this #1 stock maker on the shelf. They get one, each one of them in these little cartons. Used to be in cans. Now it's a little more friendly. And the carton is a quart, and it's not terribly expensive, and can do some real favors for you. Any questions or thoughts before I kind of move on to the next little note thing? Check in. I feel like that's up there now. Yeah. Okay. So come back to this. Again, for those of you that have been with me for a while through some of these, I realize that this is a little different, but I'm trying to provide some different opportunities without kind of getting stuck in 3-4 recipes. If I gave you all the recipes that, you know, that I was thinking about when these things were being put together, it'd be some pretty large bags and a whole lot of paper. So I'm just trying to do some interconnectivity and talk about the nutritious stuff and get some background so that you can make some choices. Okay. I think I hit all of the, okay, for the folks that I can see that are on video, is everybody familiar with the term, if I say complete protein, do we know what we're saying? Is that you can do a this, or I see a good shaking of the head there. Yeah, okay. All right, so that's worth it right there. We always think about proteins in terms of, you know, chicken, fish, pork, beef, right? And, you know, animal proteins. But there are a lot of proteins that are available to you that don't necessarily have, you know, things like, you know, saturated fats that kind of go along with some of the animal proteins that we talk about. And one of the things that I have learned really since I got here, since I got to WIT, I knew that you could use legumes, beans as a protein source, and I knew all the positives and the obvious negatives that kind of go along with that. What I didn't realize that there are several grains that are a complete protein, and when I say complete protein, what I mean is what your body needs is a set of amino acids that become proteins. And a lot of things have protein in them, but they don't provide you with all of the proteins that your body says that it needs during the course of a day. You get a lot of those, once again, from those animal proteins, chicken, beef, pork, etc. There's a handful of grains that you can get. You have two of them in front of you. One of them is the quinoa. The other one is the red rice. I believe has a decent amount of a protein. And when I say a complete protein, it means that it has every one of those amino acids that your body says that it needs to continue, from your need for the protein, and it's a grain, so complete protein. So like I say, there's a bunch of incomplete ones, but when you're looking for stuff, you don't have any of those things attached to you that are animal proteins that tend to, even some of the healthier ones, still, over time, you're worried about cholesterol and that kind of stuff. Here, you don't have as many worries there. You're fulfilling something that you need for your body. In particular here, you're not sacrificing flavor for it. And it's kind of better for you. So complete versus incomplete protein. Long speech, I'm sorry. But it's a positive one. That's a positive message. I, again, did not know I was required to teach a nutrition class. So I needed to maybe learn some things about that. And I learned a bunch of stuff that I probably never use. So I'm trying to pull those tidbits of things that I did learn and pass those on to you. Next term, glycemic index. How about thumbs up or down, folks? Glycemic index, or in the middle? Yeah. Okay. So there are, just like there are diets for people like, keto or paleo or grapefruit or whatever, there's these different diets. There is a glycemic index diet. I'm not telling you, that you should do that one. I'm actually kind of telling you that you shouldn't use that as a diet basis or the foundation of it, but you can use it as a positive. What glycemic index is it talks about the carbs for whatever. I said that a lot of things have proteins. Well, most everything has some level of carbohydrate in it, right? And we know the ones that are bad for us that taste so good, and we have a pretty good idea of the ones that are pretty good for us, and hopefully they taste fairly okay. So I thought I might bring that to the table. It's what it is the glycemic index is how when you eat the carbs and they turn into sugars, some of them go immediately. A donut gives you that instant sugar shot, but then in 20 minutes you're just beat down and kind of sluggish, because all of those carbohydrates got switched to sugars real quick, ran through, had a great time in your body, and then settled back in as sugars that are gonna stay in your body for a while. Those are high on the glycemic index, but there are a lot of low glycemic index things that you can eat. That the positive thing is that they don't spike in your system. They provide you with a much more steady flow of your benefits of your carbohydrates, instead of jumping in, hey, it's a party, and then going away quickly. It's more like going slow and steady down the highway. So I'm going off script here a little bit. I should probably get back to what I wrote. Some examples. Simple carbohydrates. I gave the example of a donut. A soda. Regular soda is a carbohydrate, and if we get conflicting things when someone says, hey, for what you should be doing, you need 100 carbohydrates, in your diet a day. But I mean, you wouldn't use those in a straight up Coca-Cola, which my wife just loves, because once again, that's gonna jump up. You're gonna get a little bit of maybe a sugar rush or something, and then it's gonna die out on you. And what you really need are things that don't spike. All of these things that you have in front of you just happen to be shockingly, because I did spend a little bit of time on this class. They all happen to be pretty moderate to low glycemic index pieces, so it's providing you with some long-term stuff, like the quinoa. If you go, the number goes from 1 to 100. The quinoa is 53. That's a pretty solid one for a grain, because a lot of grains like white rice or what have you, not so great, not so great. Tastes delicious, not super awesome. A little lower with the brown rice. Excuse me. The sweet potato. There is a reason that people eat sweet potatoes instead of white potatoes. I'm going to give an example of that a little while in just a minute. Now, we have gone on occasion to Texas Roadhouse here in town, and you know, a lot of times I get a baked potato or you know, some rice or something. My wife always gets a sweet potato, and she tells me that it is better for you, and she's right. But then when you top it, and you know, God bless Texas Roadhouse, when you top it with butter and sugar and cinnamon and marshmallows, and then melt the whole damn thing, then it becomes slightly less good for you. Now, tastes good. That's awesome. But there are a lot of benefits to sweet potatoes. You can get some really flavored, tasty benefits. You know, utilize your sweet potato, and you don't have to use all of that essentially caramel or you know, the candy that's going on top there. Try doing something like use a vinaigrette over the top. You know, and the spicier, the more tart, the better. At home, I actually use I throw some you know, because I'm usually, you know, if I'm having a steak and potatoes, you know, I've kind of gone to having a sweet potato. I know this is just terrible, you know, big, you know, chef guy. I love A1. I always have. And I put the A1 over the sweet potato. What you realize is that A1's main flavoring ingredient is vinegar, and it's mighty tasty. So try putting that over there. Try going tart, or you know, seasonings are your best friend when you're trying to get some flavor out of something, but still kind of have a healthy approach to things. So dig into your spice cabinet, and I'll say, I mean, most of the spices are great. Any of the blends that you have, you kind of want to take a look at. Like, I love Montreal seasoning. I put that on my steaks. I also, once again, I put it on my sweet potato. But it does have some sugars in there. It's not something that they advertise a lot with, and it's not a huge amount, but there's some bonding agents that have some gluten in there, and a little bit of sugars. So something to kind of think about. But you can also you certainly roast them. One of the first things that when the students come back next week for our classes, the first year students will do basic cooking methods, and one of the things that we do is a braised root vegetable medley, and we always throw in some sweet potatoes in there with things like radishes and turnips, rutabaga, all those things that look weird, and you're like, I'm not going to eat that at all. When you roast or you know, braise, you work those sugars. They actually release their sugars, but they're also, you know, lower on the glycemic. They sweeten very nicely, and it's a natural sweetening. Oh, Lynn says putting on some tahini on baked sweet potatoes. Absolutely, I have some at home. I'm going to try that. Tahini is like tahini is like the Mexican equivalent of Lowry's. And but it's better. It's delicious. It's a lime flavored. See, there you are. There's our friend tahini. The lime flavored chili seasoning. Available everywhere. Really tasty. A lot of people put it on oh gosh, I used to make it all the time. It is the Mexican corn dish with you layer it with a lime mayo, and then a lot of times, people put like chiles or something like that on the outside. But a lot of folks use tahini to put it over the top. They use tahini on those mangonada. It's like a mango puree, a mango smoothie. They'll put the tahini or some chili powder around the outside, and great for you, and you don't sacrifice any. I think there's a little bit of sugar in there, but it's pretty negligible. So thank you, Lynn. Sweet potatoes. It doesn't just have to be covered in sugar. Now, covered in sugar tastes really, really good. So more power to you. If you're going to cover something in sugar, cover the sweet potato because you're balancing things out maybe a little bit, or at least that's what we can tell ourselves. Let's see. Coming back to this. Anybody got any questions or thoughts? Feel free to share those things verbally or, again, in the chat if you want. I think I stopped at sweet potato. We were talking about stuff. Blueberries have we were looking at the glycemic index, mid-50s as well. Just like brown rice. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that blueberries a superfood, antioxidant, trying to keep you healthy, and by healthy I mean not sick. Keeps supposed to raise your antibody levels and all sorts of stuff. There are ones, blueberries, like the commonly available one. There are other things like acai berries. There is a berry that is grown locally here that kind of puts all those to shame, but it is aronia berries, but they taste like hell. You gotta add some sugar or something to it, otherwise it's really too tart to even eat. But it's super great for you. People that they have liquid berry shots. They'll do like a little ounce shot a day, and they just don't get sick. I did it for a year. I didn't get sick. It's great. Anyway, blueberries. You guys are all kind of familiar. We could certainly talk about putting them in. Let's have another turn of the year yogurt parfait. You're going to get pretty tired of that pretty quick, right? What I'm encouraging you to do is put it in again with some savory items. Throw it in. You can throw it in. You could easily. We were talking about the tahini a second ago. You could throw some tahini or some chili pepper into the coat the blueberries. Throw it in on a spinach salad, maybe with some mushrooms and firm avocado, which we'll talk all about. All of these things can tie together pretty well. The thing that I want you to take away from this, instead of just doing the same old things, nothing wrong with some yogurt and some blueberries. Making yourself a little parfait, or throwing it in with some granola, putting it over the top of oatmeal. I learned that instant oatmeal is not your friend. That's a terrible disappointment to me. Thought I'd pass that on to you. Let me just ruin your new year. I thought I was doing well when I was eating oatmeal, but apparently the instant really takes away a lot of the positive things. So you gotta do the basic stuff and then add things to it. We had blueberries. We use them in some type of savory mixture. I saw a couple different recipes. if you're looking, I see a couple of you, taking notes as we go along, which I know, good for you guys. You're getting your money's worth. Look for a couple stir fries. There's a couple stir fry recipes out there that have blueberries in them. They kind of add them in towards the end, but you also have a little bit of texture there and a different flavor. Now, canned blueberries, not so great. You need them, the fresher, the more tart, the better they're going to work for that. Anything that's kind of sweeter, they squish too quickly because they've been soaked in some type of, sugar water. So blueberries, savory things, just like the sweet potatoes, give it a shot. Okay. If you look in your bag of goodies and you see your avocado and you're like, chef, that's ridiculous, man. Why did you give me a green avocado? Do you not know how to pick an avocado? What's the matter with you? It's on purpose. Now, we all know that a darker avocado is super great for some guacamole. I had no idea until I started doing this how good guacamole is for you, in moderation, just like everything else. I had no idea. But this specifically, I'm going to encourage you. This is my little spin on things. I'm going to encourage you to bust into your green avocado. Don't just stick it in the brown bag and wait for it. Cut into it. It's a lot more firm and it has a little bit more of a tart flavor. It's going to hold together if you're putting things into a sandwich, into a wrap, on a salad. You put it in your breakfast burrito. You're putting it over the top of some fried eggs in the morning. Whatever you're doing, a lot of times, if it's ripe enough to make some guacamole, it's not ripe enough to hold up. And then you've got something that is tasty, but might have oxidized a little bit if you're taking something to work with you, brown bagging it or whatever. And you brought this beautiful salad that looked great at 7 a.m., but you pull it out at noon and you're like, did I not refrigerate it well enough or whatever? Green avocado won't do that. It's a little more firm. It's a little less, I wouldn't necessarily use the word sweet, but it's a little less, it's a little more tart. Sort of like if you had added some citrus to it or what have you, which is, not necessarily a bad thing at all. But it does hold up very nicely and is your friend. Avocados, very low glycemic shot, 15 on the scale of 1 to 100. So there's a lot of positive. There is some carbs in there. It's kind of it's a lower amount. And yes, you've got all of those. I would say, especially after the last couple of years, most folks know that there's some real positive benefits to avocados as far as being a positive fat. Where when I grew up, people thought it was the opposite of positive, that it was just not great for you at all. So in addition to all of those things, I'm telling you, that's my little spin on things, that you should have them green and get a nice slice. We're on to spinach. It's hard for me to talk about something that you guys are so familiar with, and once again, the benefits thereof. We also know the setbacks. I would rather eat my own shoe than have canned spinach, right? I hate it so much. I hope that you folks like it. Good for you. But it's brutal. What I do, however, like is making spinach, not necessarily down to that sort of strained look, but I do like, for those of you, once again, that I can see, any of you had a wilted spinach salad, maybe with some bacon, like hot dressing goes over the top of it? Yes, maybe I did. For those of you, okay, put it down for a second. For those of you that have, did you like it or did you not like it? Okay, there's a, there's a kind of a, there's a hesitant yes going on. All right. Listen, you don't have to. I love me some bacon, people. I didn't get this shape by not loving bacon. I love bacon, and I love bacon grease. I love making hot vinaigrettes with bacon. But you can have a nice wilted spinach salad that's very tasty. Just use olive oil instead of bacon grease, and put in, what I do. And I convinced my wife that we were going to do this, and I'm like, in the background, I'm like, well, it'll be okay. But I'm really trying to sell her on it. And I used some olive oil. I threw in some garlic, and a couple dried herbs that I had in the spice cabinet, and then I added in the apple cider vinegar and whisked it together. Smelled pretty good. I'm like, okay, this is going better than I thought, and added it over the spinach once again with our friend the quinoa. Put it in there. It was a different texture. Yeah, I added some croutons. I'm not a monster. I wanted some kind of crunch. And it was surprisingly delightful. It was great. We've done it 2 or 3 times since, and I love me some bacon, but I didn't miss it in the dish. And it was so good, and it was, good for you. It was warm and comforting. I had it in the middle of the summer, and it was still pretty tasty, but I think I'd enjoy it, when it's colder now. Question. Where'd you get the nice spinach? Honestly, I once again, I got whatever I could, tried to kind of get it together, and I got it at Sam's. But honestly, it's that same large plastic container. It's about this long, it's about this tall, has a plastic lid. And I have always, again, Sam's isn't paying me anything to endorse, whatever. But if you do happen to have if you have an account, we have always had success with their spinach. And that container, which at Hy-Vee is like $6 to $8, is $3 at Sam's. So, take advantage of that if you can. And it's, like I say, it's always been a really above average product, and it will hold that way. We usually get about 2 weeks out of that container. And honestly, unfortunately, we end up, chucking some of it, throw it over the deck for the deer. But it is pretty great. I have the same thing you have. I picked up Monday, I think. So yeah, it's, and we just kept it under refrigeration. It's a pretty good product. Okay, back to the notes. I said that the avocados were 15 on the scale. The spinach is also 15 on the scale, and you can't go wrong there. One of the other things that I was going to have you look for, there's a pretty good recipe for. I'm a big fan of crab cakes, but you can make a quinoa cake that tastes a lot better than. Now I've tried many times. I want to enjoy a black bean cake, but I rarely have. I make them, but I rarely enjoy them. But this quinoa cake looks a lot like a crab cake, and they served it over a base of spinach. They had a mushroom vinaigrette that went over the top of that. You got yourself a champ right there. You could also fold in some, you get some canned crab or whatever. That's you can get some fresh crab if you want to spend hundreds of dollars. Super expensive. And you just use a little bit of egg yolk and mayo to bond things, and then you sear it. You put it over there, It's pretty tasty. I would not say I'm fairly honest, both here at the school and out in the public. Yeah, I think I'm old enough now that I can say whether something tastes good or if it tastes like garbage. And I've had a couple times where I've had quinoa dishes where they're not real great, but most of them are pretty good. I've had a lot of just really terrible brown rice. Follow the recipe is what I have to say. People who follow the recipe for cooking brown rice are successful. The people that don't aren't. Okay. Finally, these are portobello mushrooms, but they're minis. And it seems like they're always at Hy-Vee. I got them at Sam's. Portobellos, there's a reason that people keep coming back to them. There's nothing wrong with an oyster or just regular mushroom. But portobellos have those flavonoids that you guys keep hearing the word umami. That is this flavor that you get like from, heavily protein things like steak or soy sauce, have that heavy sort of mouth feel to them. Well, portobellos do kind of the same job. For years, I would use for vegetarian options in restaurants. I would marinate and grill some portobellos, and we stuff them and all sorts of positive things. But it's not just for the vegetarians. I mean, I love me some some sautéed mushrooms and onions as much as the next person. Love them. The things that I would recommend here are giving them just a quick steam. You could take this bag, drop a little bit of water into it, pop it in the microwave for like 45 seconds. And you've steamed the mushrooms without adding any fat, which, a lot of times if you're really enjoying mushrooms, a lot of times you're really enjoying some butter that goes along with them, right? You add in a little bit of garlic, and you have yourself, and nobody says this, let them cool. Then you got yourself a snack that is healthy, but it's also because of that umami feeling, those flavonoids, they're filling you up. And it's very satisfying. You get a tiny little slice of stuff. It's going to take you forever. So I recommend like quartering or just leaving them. If you have the size that you have, in your bag there, leave them whole. Not a thing wrong with that. You could add some olive oil as well. And you got yourself a snack. Kind of like, I don't have them here because, carrots are heavy, but a lot of you have been to, some type of local Mexican restaurant, and you along with your tacos or burritos, you get the Mexican carrots. Man, what I found when I was at a point where I was really kind of trying to watch what I was doing, it became my favorite snack. And I learned to make a mean Mexican carrot. There's 1,000 recipes. They're all very similar. They usually involve white vinegar, carrots, cilantro, onion, and jalapeno. And there's different varietals of how that gets you. Get the largest carrots that you can. You can get the baby carrots, but they don't have as much flavor. Plus the bag of carrots. Yeah, you got to peel them, but it's less expensive and they have better flavor. Follow that recipe for Mexican pickled carrots and chill them. I noticed with the restaurants around town, if I get them, for me, they're a little too, hello, kitty. They're a little too soft. I like mine. My preference is that they're a little more firm and they have some crunch, because when I'm snacking on something and I'm hungry, I like the bite, the crunch of the carrot, but you can still get a lot of flavor, and there's no bad things attached to that. There's no gluten, there's no fat, but there's lots and lots and lots of flavor. So even though I didn't include them in here, find yourself some recipes for Mexican pickled carrots, you'd be happy. It is one of the first things that we'll do with my advanced students as soon as they come back in advanced garde manger. It's one of the first things that we'll cover in class with different pickling things. Anything that you can find. Well, okay, not anything. Pickles, pig's feeder. I mean, whatever. But a lot of pickled items, especially pickled vegetables, you can get a lot of flavor with not a lot of adding of calories, and you can eat them all day. I did do, with decent success, I did do, when I was doing the carrots, I also did some celery. I did them, just blanched them for, just a really short period of time in that same poaching liquid. And then I tossed them, ironically, with some tahini. And that was a good crunch, but it wasn't just celery, right? Which is super boring. And I didn't add any cheese or peanut butter to that whole thing. So I got all the benefits and I got a lot of nice flavor without adding a whole bunch of calories or fat. So just went through the ingredients there. A couple other things that, talked about the broth. While I was waiting for this class to start, I munched on some cashews, and I'm looking at the label and it says total fat 13 grams. And you're like, oh, geez, that's brutal. And that's what scares people away from eating various nuts as a great protein source. But saturated fat, it's only like, so it's 2.5 grams out of that whole 13. Everything else is poly or monounsaturated, and that's great. Plus, it's giving you a huge protein shot. You get a little bit of salt, and that's helpful. It's not a bad choice if you're trying to get some snacks. You want protein and you want a crunch. I don't think I have to tell you folks, cashews taste good. Okay. A couple of things when you're looking at, we started this whole conversation where we're talking about glycemic index. I said that you shouldn't go by it because sometimes, there's a little bit of a misnomer, and I added a couple items here to illustrate. So a portion of French fries, and I'm looking at this comparative thing, is 75 on the glycemic index, which, a sweet potato is 61. So that's not just terrible, but the alternative, the healthier, the baked potato, right, that you would get instead of those French fries, has a glycemic index of in the upper 90s. So that's not your friend. So it can be a little bit, it has to do with portion, and it has to do within that portion how the carbs are presented. Another one, and this illustrates it a little bit better. Watermelon has a relatively high number. It's in the mid 70s. But the amount of actual carbs that are in the watermelon is super low. So eat watermelon all day long. That's just dandy. So it all has to do with what the presence of the carbs is. So we talked a lot about sugars. Carbs turn into sugars. There are a couple things that get us right, and American, world society now, but American society more than anything. And if you talk about processed things, the two things that usually come up, right, sugar and sodium, and sometimes we marry those things together to delightful things. So those are the things that we're watching for. Again, whenever you are wanting to add, salt to something, try to look at an acid instead. Vinegar, lemon juice, lime juice, something along those lines will give you something that's very similar to the presence of salt without having to do that. And I use the example here. I looked up the you're talking about the combining of various things, and something that's just we see every day. Regular old bag of Dorito chips. Here's the combination. It's a 72 on the glycemic index, so it has relatively simple sugars that are just killing you. Now, I love me some Doritos. Got a couple bags at home right now. 9% of your entire intake of sodium in one bag of those Doritos, and 8 grams of saturated fat. All of those things combine to be a killer. So we're trying to mitigate that. Maybe you have 1 or 2 of those, but you're trying to avoid those particular things. We finished. We pretty much we knocked out glycemic index and the sodium indicators and that kind of stuff. But so the next term, clean. And Crystal could she's again, she's vegan. She can speak to that a lot more. In fact, we're going to have a class that I want to call Vegan That Doesn't Suck sometime in the early fall. To make some stuff that tastes pretty good, that just happens to be vegan. Just like once again, this thing that I've rattled on and on about just happens to be vegan. I'm not going to search for stuff, but if it's good for you, that's great. So the word clean, she would say that looking at the ingredient list for this broth, fairly clean. There are a couple concentrates in here. There's an onion concentrate. There's a carrot concentrate, but there's a minute amount of them. Bag of spinach, clean. There aren't a lot of ingredients. There aren't a lot of additives, preservatives, colors, yada yada yada, and so that is that familiar term that people continue, and they seem to use a lot more these days. And when people are going out to eat, it's starting to become a marketing thing. There's a couple restaurants in town that use it, like Applebee's used to have the little markers for things that were heart healthy or low cholesterol or something, right? These couple places are starting to do that, clean ingredients. There's nothing that is preserved. A lot of you folks, if you shop for deli meat, something that's really common. If you're buying the prepackaged stuff and you're looking through there, you'll see that that they have a lot of them have gone to non-brined or oh gosh, struggling to think of the term. Essentially, they're saying that it's not preserved. Now, if you're buying a sliced deli meat, I mean, it kind of stands to reason. You don't want something that keeps for 80 days. That's a terrible thought, So that would also fall under that clean heading. I think that's about where I've been. I thought we might have a few more questions or some conversation. Anybody want to ask some questions about something, like, what about this thing? And I'm supposed to do this, but and we can certainly talk about it. Anything that jumps out at you folks? Yeah, it's not looking good. I do want to, now's as good a time as any to say, the classes that, I'm not ending the class or what have you, but I transition because we're doing something so different this round. we're going to overcompensate a little bit with the next few classes. We're not listed in the catalog, with Mara being gone. Her and Sarah from marketing will put things together, and it'll be out, in the next month or so, I believe. But with my classes, I also had some requests for something that, like, I've always tried to do a spin on this or that. I'm going to do some kind of traditional theme stuff. So there'll be an Italian class where we'll cover some pastas, maybe some ossobuco. There'll be recipes. It'll be a pretty good time. And then we're going to do a French class as well. Now, a lot of French cooking is really time consuming. So I'm going to choose my recipes kind of carefully so that we can get things in an okay time. Like, I would love to do a Gasaway, which is like, rural farm food, but like the best ever. It's like the best ham and beans that you've ever had in your entire life, plus a lot. It's really tasty, but it burns out some time. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to really think about how that's going to go. We'll have a couple cocktail classes with Jazar, and he's got some fun themes that he's putting together there. And then, like I say, going into that'll probably take us through the spring semester and getting into the fall. One of the things that we've talked about, we'll have that pretty well finalized, I think, in the next couple months, is that vegan class where it actually tastes good. The knock on that kind of stuff is that it's, there's so many things that you can't put in it that it doesn't taste very good at all. Well, Crystal has tried to convince me that and I'm a pretty stubborn. I love cheese. I love meat. Meat's great. I like eggs as much as the next person. We're going to try to make some stuff that tastes pretty darn good. So she'll be getting out her A list for that stuff, and we'll have a dual class for that. So that's what's coming. That pretty much knocks out what I sent along with, and I hope that you guys take some of those thoughts that we had, go find some things that sound pretty good to you. I didn't want to lock you into specific recipes with this stuff. I'm not for sure what people like or what they don't. I have a little bit better idea with more specific theme things. So I hope you get some good utilization from the stuff that came. Hopefully got some good ideas from there. And thank you for letting me just babble on for a while. It's not something that we've really covered. We talk about different nutritional things as we go through these classes, or the benefits of this or that, but we haven't really spent a ton of time talking about making whatever choices there are. There's a question: how long do you microwave the mushrooms? Really, not a long time. It depends if you're using water or oil or both. Water penetrates a little quicker. So, maybe for this bag and the density that's there, I'd say maybe, 40 to 45 seconds. If it's oil, if it's straight up oil, olive oil, or what have you, I'd maybe go a minute to a minute 10. I'd check it every, it's a microwave. I'd check it every little, every 20 or 25 seconds until it got to the texture that you want. We're not talking about so much like sauteed mushrooms and onions there, as much as something that still has just a little bit of chew, a little bit of bite. And then adding in, you throw in some garlic, throw in some various ingredients. Anybody else have some questions? Or I'm keeping people awake here. It's dangerous. Anything else anybody wants to know?
Are those classes going to be online?
I think for the ones through to the summer, they will be online. And then I suspect that we'll still always do some online. Let's say, that all of the, you're tired of hearing about COVID. I'm not going to go into the whole deal, but let's say that there's some good resolution to things. Then we may do some in class things. What I've realized is it's a lot easier to push out information this way. And you guys are in the comfort of your own homes, especially the cocktail classes. We might do, if we do some in-person things after the after May, we may do them in here where folks can still kind of, for those of you that have been in this particular kitchen, there's a lot of seating and you can kind of separate from folks. And I can make some food for you. We can teach some things and then you eat that stuff. And then you don't even have to do your own dishes. For those of you that go in the way back to when we did do things in our kitchen here, I'm saving those for, 1 or 2 times a year because, well, honestly, it's pretty messy. There's a lot of folks that aren't familiar with and just load up some dishes that I end up washing. And I can't ask you guys to do dishes. That's just wrong. So we'll probably do a few less of those, but we may do some of these things in here. But overall, for the foreseeable future, and I'm saying May, I'm not sure how it's going to go. For the foreseeable future, I think Zoom's still our thing. So, excuse me, with the next couple classes that we do, again, we're going to do a little over course correcting. And so they might be kind of larger kits to deal with. It'll have probably some animal proteins in them and some portions of this and that and the other thing. So be prepared for that. This is just kind of a sort of a one-off kind of a deal. I'm seeing, there's some folks, I really do. I enjoy this format a lot. And I hope you guys do too. Whether it's, this particular kind of deal or, with, across the board, it does seem you can kind of choose. I like that you guys can kind of choose what you're doing. Maybe you want to make this dish, but you don't want to make the next one right now, but you can do that later and then, skip on to the next thing or whatever. It seems to have gone well for folks. So, any other thoughts or questions, folks?
Well, definitely the drinking classes should be at home.
Yeah, they're dry camp.
I don't want to come up to campus, have some drinks and then drive home.
And I am nervous. Can you imagine if you can see there's a big glass window over here. And so when class is in session, students walk by here all the time. I live in fear of Dr. Merle walking by as I'm sipping on one of the craft cocktails that we make. It wouldn't be a good look. Definitely keeping the dry campus dry, I think, is probably a good idea. So, anything else, folks? Okay. All right. Well, I will bid you a good evening. Enjoy. I hope you have fun playing around with the ingredients. Remember, if you did something with these sweet, try doing them savory. And if you did something savory, try doing them with some spices other than salt. Those are my pass-ons for those things. Use vinegar wherever you can. All right, you guys, have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Chef.
Yeah. I'll stay right here. Thank you. Okay. Feel free to log off as you'd like. I don't want to I don't want to cut everybody off. All right. Good seeing you, Miss Echo.
Good to see you.
Yeah, bye, Echo.
Hi, good to see you.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Have a great one.